Namaste, Jai Hind. You're on the right stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan and thank you for staying with us. And of course, at the outset, we'd like to thank our viewers for your continued patronage and for keeping the show and the channel #1 for the last many weeks. Thank you very much. We continue to train the focus on a rising radicalism threat or trend south of the Vindhyas in South India, ladies and gentlemen. States of Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, right on the spotlight on this trouble. On this edition of The Right Stand, yes, the Mangaluru blast happened. Yes, there have been inputs about Sharik being a lone wolf, highly radicalized but trying to work on his own. But there is confirmation that he has traveled to some of the hubs which have been on the radar of the intelligence agencies. He's been in touch with certain elements who are also highly radicalized, and some of them have been under the scrutiny of the NIA in the past. But what we will focus on today on this edition is the Coimbatore blast, where we have been able to glean critical information from the topmost intelligence agencies and sources within the intelligence establishment who have tried to create or very clearly delineate this threat and assess how big a problem this is. And it starts and revolves around not Sharik but Mubeen. We'll come to that in just a bit, but before that, let's look at the 2-3 instances which actually turned the spotlight. It all started, like Arunima was mentioning last evening on The Nation at 5, it all started in Shivamogga with those clashes around the Independence Day. 75 years of our independence, Har Ghar Tiranga, and the clashes that happened, there were deaths. Soon after that, there was a blast on the banks of the Tungabhadra. 2 people get arrested there. One of them runs away. The man who ran away was Sharik. Then we have this attempt in Tamil Nadu, which was again in Coimbatore, which was right outside a temple, and it became a cylinder blast. It was initially called a cylinder blast, and then they realized that no, it was far more diabolic. It was actually intended to be a Fidaiin strike by somebody who was highly radicalized, and the threads of that person connect to many other radical elements who've been spreading in that area. Ukadam as an area in Coimbatore is on the spotlight. We'll tell you all about it. Let's try and look at all the blasts. The first one, the blast on the banks of the Tungabhadra. This happened on the 20th of September. IED made from gelatin sticks, potassium, etc. was used. So the composition of the explosives very similar to the following instances. Police probing if this was a trial run for the Mangaluru attack because he was involved. Sharik was involved. Right now is a lone wolf, but he had 2 other people working with him. Police probing if this was a trial run. The next one that happened was in Tamil Nadu. So the police probing, let's move on to the next. 23rd October in Coimbatore. So exactly just about a month later, it's in Coimbatore where the blast in a car near a temple, and the person who was planning the attack got killed in the process because the explosive went off earlier than expected. And this is Jamesha Mubeen, linked to the Sri Lanka suicide bomber Irshad Hashim and that entire network. Irshad Hashim's footprints in Coimbatore have been documented. We'll come to that. Cops probing links to Mohammed Sharik. Whether or not, because Sharik also traveled to Coimbatore, we put that out last evening here on The Right Stand. Then there is this IED blast, November 19th in Mangaluru inside an auto rickshaw, and the person injured is Sharik himself. Turns out he was the one who escaped in Mangaluru. He had a similar composition of the improvised explosive device. He's put out a picture with a pressure cooker, and he was pushing ISIS-style attacks. So this is allegedly carrying ID to the blast location, and he had identified multiple blast locations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's set up the Right Stand exclusive news break here that takes this story forward, pieces all the information together. Let's try and understand this in detail. Who is Jamesha Mubeen? Jamesha Mubeen is a highly radicalized individual. ISIS-inspired radicalism is manifest. The blast was near the Kottai Easwaran Temple in Coimbatore on the 23rd. It's a terror attack, and the perpetrators are members of ISIS-inspired module. They can be termed first attempted suicide attack by ISIS in India. This is the first attempted Fidayeen attack by the ISIS in India. Explosive remnants indicate maximum damage was the intention. Bomb-making material, handwritten jihadi notes were found at Jamesha Mubeen's residence, which showed how radicalized he was and how diabolic his plans were. The associates, they had procured bomb-making material from e-commerce platforms. That's another cause for worry. And there is more information, ladies and gentlemen, as our investigations editor Manoj Gupta has been able to get this out of the top intelligence agencies. Let's try and understand who is Jamesha Mubeen. What are the background and antecedents of this individual? This suicide bomber or attacker, he was killed. He was actually planning 2019 Easter bombing style operation. So what happened in Sri Lanka, he was trying to recreate something similar here in India, in Hindustan. Also, he had recceed 5 other Coimbatore temples besides the Kottai Easwaran Temple for attacks. Inspired by the Islamic State ideologue, Sri Lanka suicide bomber Zahran Hashim. Now, Zahran Hashim has been recorded and documented as staying in Coimbatore. Was he staying in that same area, which is fast emerging as the new Bhatkal? We'll have to wait and watch and see if we can get confirmation. Now, with ISIS and Sharia philosophies and ideology, he was questioned by the NIA in 2019 for links with Azharuddin and pro-ISIS proclivities. He has links to Riaz Abu Bakr, who was arrested in 2019 for ISIS links. You see the timeline, ladies and gentlemen, it's not recent. It's been developing, brewing since 2014, 2017, 2018, 2019 and into 2022. So they continue to have such hard radicalized intent, ISIS-inspired intent, and somewhere does it all tie up with that aspect where when ISIS dissipated in Syria, a lot of them who went there or who are inspired by that ideology, which has been rejected overall by the globe, did they then come back to India and then go ahead and propagate that radical ideology? And did they have a free run? Did they penetrate, enter into various outfits? And did outfits like PFI give them enough and more cover fire and fertile ground? Or were they actively aiding such radicalization? We'll dwell on all of that. Let's go across to our guest as we try and understand this entire spread of radicalism in the south of our country. It's not that it's not there in other parts of our country, but this is very clearly proving to be a trend. And it's backed by very, very strongly rooted radicalism, high levels of brainwashing amongst highly educated individuals. That's also a concern. Abhishek Banerjee, columnist, President of Bengaluru, with us. Major General Rajan Kochar, member of the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defence Studies, with us. Binay Singh ji is with us, author, Bleeding India and Senior Research Fellow at Dr. S.P. Mukherjee Research Foundation. Dr. Tara Karta, former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, with us. And Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation, with us. Namaste to the lady and the gentleman. Thank you very, very much. Dr. Tara Karta, I'm going to start with you. Does this not point to a trend? And is this not worrying for us?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said it's all over the country, but in the south, it's particularly worrying because you didn't have this earlier. Now it's growing there as well. You had the whole Mumbai attack. You're right, it's not new, but the IS angle, again, as you said, is a very, very worrying aspect because it is appealing to the educated Indian. Where are these people? The most educated you find among the youth is in the south, especially in Kerala, which is why you found much of the modules replaced. You know, when the communist ideology died, it got replaced with the IS ideology. That's the kind of trend that we've seen in most of these states. When one ideology dies out, another one comes. So in Kerala, Karnataka, and Uttar Karnataka in particular is an educated, relatively affluent area. So this lot of people are then exposed to the huge, massive amounts of social media, what can I say, disinformation, nothing else that I can call it other than disinformation, as well as very, very experienced IS indoctrination. So it is a very frightening experience. I'm very dismayed that this happened, but there are reasons also why we need to introspect to see why it happened in the first place and why is it growing in these states in the south.
No, but General Rajan Kochar, it also shows a deep-seated or hatred, bigoted point of view, where those who are not Muslims need to die. They need to be taught a lesson. And somewhere, they seem to have bought this narrative that Hindus are the oppressors, Muslims are the victims here in India, and there is a reason to fight back. That's where the justification for violence and killing of innocents comes out, because you're doing it for survival, to protect your own.
Very well brought out. You need to understand a plant grows when there is a fertile ground. So the first aspect is why these elements are happening only in a particular region and why not across the country. Because if you read the recent intelligence input from the IB, you will gather that it is only certain selected areas of the country which are getting exploited by these radicals, and especially this Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka belt. And we need to understand that it primarily relates to lack of governance, a lack of intelligence, and lack of surveillance. Because these three things are extremely important if we have to curb this radicalism, because radicalism does not happen overnight. It spreads its wings because it requires a certain amount of ideology. It requires a certain amount of funding, and when there is unemployment and poverty in areas, you will find these people getting exploited. And therefore, I feel it is time for the technology to be brought in at a very larger scale. Right now, technology is available, but we are not using it. There is a high risk assessment tool and a digital mapping technique which is being used by the British intelligence agencies. Mossad is using it. Why can't we use it in our country to identify those areas, and constant surveillance is kept on these areas, because unless we will find incidents taking place. You take the example of Coimbatore, you take the example of Coimbatore, take the example of Bangalore. Recent incidents which have taken place, and I recommend that we use technology to actually get over, and of course the long-term measures are there which would require greater deliberation from the government.
But here is my concern. General Dhruv Katoch also come in before I bring in Binay Singhji and Abhishek Banerjee for the opening comments. How many people do you survey? And these people who are under constant surveillance and questioning, General Katoch. You may know that some activity is happening, but you can't put them behind bars on preventive detention. Our laws don't allow for preventive detention beyond a certain aspect, beyond a certain point. And the courts are lenient towards such acts. They actually are harder on the intelligence agencies and the enforcement agencies. The whole aspect of human rights, bail is the right, bail is the norm, jail is the exception. All those principles come into play.
Thank you, Anand. Yes, that is true. But you see, if you look at it from the other point of view, if jail becomes the norm, then the tendency to misuse that will also be very, very high. So, I mean, that is a different ball game altogether. Here, I think the two previous speakers have given viewpoints. I would like to digress a little bit, really. You see, I think one of the reasons why radicalization is spreading is the political culture which is prevailing in certain areas. And when this political culture leads to appeasement of certain communities, that is where this culture spreads. And it is not an accident that when you see this particular phenomenon happening in Kerala and in Tamil Nadu, because there is an appeal to a particular segment of the vote bank. So I think one of the steps which obviously we have to go through the de-radicalization and to see that that process goes through. But I think it is very important now for all political parties to, smell the coffee. Things are dangerous today, and if people are going to get radicalized and without direction from a terror organization, carry out attacks in small groups, I think that is going to be a situation very, very difficult to handle. This is one. Number two, I think what we really need to do is, once we have got a person and we have, without any doubt, we have caught him now. After that, there should be no scope for mercy. I think it should be made put very clearly into our manuals that if a person is convicted on a terror charge, there will be no bail till such time as he dies. That means he will be in jail till he dies, period. Now, unless we have that element of rigidity put in, you will find rapists and murderers, including the murderers of a former prime minister, they start getting away because the law treats them softly.
No, but
5
see,
years,
but
10 years,
but
15 years.
that's what
I'm.
But that's what I'm saying, sir. These people came with the idea of dying. They are not afraid to die. They believe that their time is up. Their name on the board on the tombstone is already written. All they are saying is that they will die for a cause and they will kill and then die. That seems to be their motivation. So this aspect of you're not going to come out, you're going to be incarcerated for life doesn't seem to affect them because they're so far gone. The other interesting point is that Dr. Tarakarta said that there are certain pockets. Kocharji also said that there are certain pockets in our country. But Binay Singh ji, let's go back to history. The same area of North Kerala and Dakshina Karnataka, which is under the eyes of this lot, was the same place where the Moplas went massacring Hindus 100 years ago. Again, Uttara Kannada also saw a lot of riots exactly 100 years ago. If you look at Assam and that pocket, it has seen the same kind of communal strife for more than 100 years. These are all pockets where, again, communal disharmony has been there, and it's the same fertile ground that's being activated again. Even in Tamil Nadu, this pocket, where were our agencies not alert that Zahran Hashim was in Coimbatore? This region called Ukkadam has been under the radar of the intelligence agents because everybody seems to be going there and converging there in Coimbatore. It's fast emerging as a new Bhatkal. Sabko sab pata hai, phir bhi ye ho raha hai. We are lucky that all three attempts failed and it actually got the predator and not the prey. Imagine the damage it would have happened had it happened right at the time of the main Aarti and Puja on that festival day which it was planned in Coimbatore.
Anand, it's okay that we were lucky this time, but we won't be lucky again and again. So, very recently, we have witnessed a phenomena, a modus operandi named PFI. It was a terrorist outfit working on a fifth generation modus operandi. So, our question is often asked that is this the end of PFI, end of SIMI or end of PFI? No, it is not. PFI was a modus operandi. It was not an organization. It come again with a new format, with the next generation modus operandi, with the upgraded format. And the one thing which was very, you can notice with the PFI-like organizations that they were using the soft provisions of our Indian constitution against the Indian democracy for their interest. So they are using the same law which is supposed to safeguard us. They are using the same law to safeguard themselves, to seal their terrorist intention. One more thing, you name any terrorist activity in the last 2 decades, anywhere in this country, you will find a South India connect. You will find a Kerala or Tamil Nadu connect. In 2008, there were 4 terrorists from Kerala, from Malappuram. They were fighting for, in Kashmir.
Yes.
Kerala, Malayali guys, they went to Kashmir. And the most, surprising fact was that one guy, he just converted a year back. He was a Christian and he converted a year back and he became a terrorist. And he went to Kashmir to fight for the, cause of jihad. One more thing. It is not just a phenomena, Islamic terrorism or extremism or highly educated guys, they are being radicalized. It's not a phenomena or a challenge which only India is witnessing. Let me give you an example of Pakistan. A very wonderful example. Pakistan, which is producer of terrorism, and at the same time it is a victim of terrorism. In 2019, there was a study, drivers of violent extremism in higher educational institutions in Pakistan. It was published from Routledge Publication. And the same kind of a study, emerging trends of campus radicalization in Pakistan that was published by Cambridge University Press. And we must know what the finding was. That the best institutions in Pakistan, like Quaid-e-Azam Technical University, they were producing the best quality of terrorists. So level of education has nothing to do with the level of radicalization. In India, we know we have a habit of not seeing what is purely visible.
Ji.
So we must try to go to the genesis. What is the root cause of this thing? So you look at Mallapuram, or you look at what happened in Mangalore or what happened in Coimbatore. But the most disturbing fact is that they were planning. You just said that they were planning a Easter kind of bombing. Let's discuss the Easter bombing. The Easter bombing, Tawheed Jamaat was involved into that, and the Tamil Nadu chapter of Tawheed Jamaat.
Yes.
They went to visit the Indian Prime Minister and several senior political leaders in Delhi. PFI, from the last 10 years, they're accused of several things, chopping off a professor's hand. They were accused of so many, extremely violent activities, terrorist activities, and some political parties, they were flirting with them in Kerala, in UP, somewhere else. And when you ban them, so the same political parties, they ask a question: what were the Indian agencies doing? So one thing, very important thing, Anand, that it is a moral duty of the Indian political parties that when it comes to national security, you must be extra alert. Don't wait for the agencies to ban them, or don't wait for the agencies to knock your door and tell you that don't get into friendship with this guy, he's a terrorist. We know about PFI, what it was doing for the last 2 decades. We know about Tawheed Jamaat. We know about Tablighi Jamaat. We know about the potential of South India, how they are trying to convert this country into a war zone. We know the intentions of the cross-border forces, the cross-border organizations. They are trying to bleed India, destabilize India. So it's a moral duty, obligation of all the political parties in India to be on high alert. And don't try to put the onus on the government, on the agency. It is our duty also to be extra alert, to be extra cautious, because these organizations have a habit of getting camouflage. These are not normal terrorist outfits. They are coming with a new kind of shield, a new generation modus operandi. And very recently, just a few months back, we have witnessed this PFI thing, how they work.
No, my point is, sir, everybody knew that the origins are way back into the Indian Mujahideen, and from there, Student Islamic Movement of India. Before that, also these organizations, and but they were allowed to proliferate. Even now, you can ban them, but you cannot round up the entire thousands of people that they've been able to mobilize, and they're all dissipated. The fact is, when you say that people from Kerala went ahead to fight in Kashmir, I am reminded of people from Kerala present on the streets of Delhi when they decided to do 5th generation of social unrest. Not with tiffin bombs and not with attacks, but with creating ruckus on the streets and mayhem and rioting. And these people, you turned up that they were dressing up like Sikhs, they were dressing up like people from the north, but they were actually people who had come from the south of the country taking trains here. And this is again remnant in history, because people travelled all the way from Bengal, they travelled from Hyderabad, they travelled from followers of Allah and Waliullah Shah to fight the Battle of Balakot. So that's also there in history. So have we not learnt our lessons, Abhishek Banerjee?
Yeah, so Anand, I will just say that about 2 years ago, there was this, I believe it was an ophthalmologist who was, working in Bangalore, and he was quite an established doctor. And then the city was shocked to find out that he had actually been fighting with the ISIS in Syria for a while.
Yes.
He came back and he had just slipped back into his normal life as a respected doctor, and he was just going on. So, the terrorist could be anywhere, could be next door. So now if we look at this Coimbatore blast and the Mangaluru blast, and then I would still like to know a little more about the incident that happened in Udaipur on the railway bridge. Then it is clear that, that we are facing a completely new wave of terrorism in our country. The enemy is able to create this army of shadow soldiers, which is completely decentralized. And the problem is that our security agencies they are still caught up in this very analog era of where they are, trying to find out which terrorist organization has planned this, who has supplied the weapon, who has supplied the money. It is not like that. It is completely decentralized. If I want to give an example, it is like the difference between, a highway robber or a thief and the modern version of, we all get phishing and the spam emails. They are not targeting any one particular person for a crime. They are just laying a wide net and seeing who they can catch. And that is what is happening right now, right? So these radicalized, these people, they are spreading out this information over the internet. 10,000 people, they are just told, you hate Hindus. Then 10,000 other people are being gathered for another cause. And then maybe 5,000 people in common. So it's concentric circles and then overlapping circles. And then there are human rights groups and NGOs and activists. Some of them are active collaborators, some are passive collaborators. It's not even because there is no one single point of failure or one single point from which it is being directed. It is completely dissipated, completely decentralized. So in order to fight them, what we need is, one thing I would suggest is in 2003, the Indian Army had done this very successful operation. I think that many of the generals here know this, is the Operation Sarpavinash, where they had gone and they had eliminated these terror pads located all throughout Kashmir. Now, what we have to do is the digital version of that. We have to do a digital online version of this Sarpavinash, where our intelligence people, they infiltrate these networks, they pose as, they also cast their own search and see who is getting radicalized, and then these people, then crack down on them, they are arrested en masse. And of course, there are ways to get around all the problems. I mean, of course, we need civil liberties, but we also need security. So there are ways to get around these things. I mean, for that matter.
The point is that how long do you keep them incarcerated? What do you do with them? Because de-radicalization doesn't work. They have become only far more radicalized or remained at the same level over 5-6 years. They've not had a change of heart. There is no remorse. That's what is evident. Take the case, we're talking about Jamesha Mubeen in Coimbatore. Take the case of Sharik. Now, Sharik is clearly, once again, history repeats itself because 26/11 they wore kalawas, they dressed up as Hindu students, they wanted to pass it off as an RSS plot and sazish. There were netas who were ready to write books and release books and immediately claim the same. Now look at what he was trying to do, Sharik was trying to do. He puts the DP of Adi Yogi, uses false Hindu names and identities. Although intelligence agencies are saying that he is the first clear lone wolf. He was trying to do all of these attacks on his own. He prepared arranged for all the bomb material himself. Analysis of phones show that, and also whether he is ISIS inspired and was he in connect with some handler is also underway. The police is also probing Sharik's use of bitcoins because he used cryptocurrency for transactions. Why would he use crypto to transact if it was not going out of the country, locally within the country? He may have used bitcoins to buy explosives. So who are these people? Now that's another network. Now he will be questioned upon recovery on whatever are the recoveries that the police have made. Now look at all these trends. Somewhere there are lessons from history we have not learned, but the enemy or those who are wanting to damage the state, bleed this country, General Kochhar, they seem to have figured out. They seem to have figured out the 5th generation version of terrorism. And they are saying whatever happens, let me correct some narrative or the other or work for some cause or the other. Let me justify Nazi Hindu terminologies. Let me justify the so-called non-existent Hindu extremism. 26/11 में fail होगा, यहाँ कामयाब हो जाएंगे. Look at what they are doing, hiding identities. And it's happening at all levels. Even in the case of Love Jihad, hiding identities. Facebook profiles, luring girls, hiding identities. It's all being done with a cause.
See, I would agree with you to some extent.
Ji.
But there are a few points which have emerged in the discussion in which I would like to comment.
Ji.
The first point is that do not expect Indian Army to be the cause of all remedies, because it is a larger perspective. It is the whole of India approach which is required. Second aspect is, as you mentioned just now, is aspect of strategic communication. If you take the example of ISI, the kind of strategic communication I have today, we are not even 20% of that. This is one area where a country has to look up country has to invest and mobilize our soft power in order to develop a potent machinery for strategic communication to counter the agenda of radicalization, because it is high time we get our act together. Because you see, we will keep on coming in these forums every day, every month, and we will discuss these things. But is these aspects getting implemented in the country? We have a number of think tanks in the country. A number of good points are but are they getting implemented? So the point is, we can talk about political leaders, we can talk about anything, but the three major areas I would like to recommend here is: one, strategic communication. The second is the role of the civil society. Do not expect the government to do everything for you. There is a role of civil society also coming into play. Each citizen of the country, if the neighbor of this guy Mubeen or Hashim or these Azruddin, if their neighbors were doing what these people are doing, and they had the courage to walk up to the security agencies and tell them about these activities, I'm sure things won't happen. And the third, as one of the speakers that you mentioned, there is need to go for a very strong legislation, because we were see even after a person getting convicted, the case drags on for 10 years in court.
Correct.
And he knows that he's going to let off, want to end it.
My point.
Yes, I would recommend, especially after this wonderful discussion we are having here, that the government of the day must take cognizance of this and act on these measures.
The point well made. I don't think it was Abhishek was anyway asking the Indian Army to get involved. He was just citing an example where he said that if the armed forces gave an eventuality to Operation Sarva Vinash physically, there needs to be an agency or some kind of an exercise which will put in place a Sarva Vinash of these on the digital domain. That you would end these platforms, infiltrate all these places and destroy these networks which are sitting abroad or coordinating using encrypted platforms. This entire exercise of radicalization, instruction, and of course going ahead and trying to do a decentralized network of terrorists or terrorism or ISIS-inspired modules. Dr. Tarakarta, do you believe that this is achievable? Where do you think we are going to struggle the most? And why do you think that there is this sudden rise in the south of India?
I just want to disagree very heavily with something what the previous speaker said. Please remember, there was a time when we were saying not a single Indian went to Syria, not a single Indian went to Afghanistan, nobody from the south anywhere went to Kashmir. What changed? That's why I said we need to introspect. Arising from that, number two, no country in the world has been able to stop a lone wolf terrorist. It can't be done. Number three, this last number of billions, whatever we have, can you do surveillance on the lot of them? You cannot. So what is the answer? The answer is to give that kind of confidence in every citizen that he does not go down that path. And I also agree that we have ignored this problem for years.
Yes.
For years, it has been going on in Kerala. I know because I brought it out. And in parts of Canada. Oh my God, the kind of things that were going on. And we tried to tell people and nobody would listen. So that has been going on. That is true. But in the end, you have to give, the political parties have to give the confidence to prevent such a drift. That is the only way you can handle it.
No, and political
you cannot surveil an entire country. It can't be done.
True, and political parties are also guilty of trying to be in denial or trying to suppress this entire aspect when they said there are no ISIS radicals. Be it chief ministers, be it central ministers, union ministers, they have tried to be in denial, and their being in denial has hurt the country. They should have addressed the problem openly, come out and said, yes, there is an issue of radicalization and we need to be alert to it and we need to put in countermeasures. We need to nip it in the bud. What happens is in our country, we allow the entire illegal building to be constructed before the orders for demolition come into play. These should not be allowed to be constructed in the first place. I'm just drawing a simile there. General Katoch and then Binay Singh, final word. General Katoch.
Right. I've got a few comments which I want to make.
Ji.
General Kocher spoke of strategic communication. Now, there are two aspects to this. You see, this is based on narrative building. Now, the terrorist groups, especially Muslim fundamentalists, their narrative is built in the madrasas and in the mosques. And they've got a very strong narrative going. We don't have a counter narrative. So we need to do two things here. One is to stop hate preaching, which is taking place in the madrasas and which emanates from the mosque. And second, build our own counter narrative. This is very important. The second point is, as far as, it has been noticed that a large number of these terrorists, they have a technical bent of mind. They are either doctors or they are engineers and the like, and they are educated. Here we must understand that the people with the scientific bent of mind do not have a tolerance for ambiguity. So for them, everything is either black or white. That is why this narrative building is important, to tell people amongst the masses, and don't let this thing grow. My last point, Anand, is, when you said that the fellow doesn't want to die, the terrorist, that is a temporary phase. At that point of time, he's quite prepared to die. I reversed it. That you said he's prepared to die. My point is, he may be prepared to die at that point of time, but it is not a continuous process that he wants to die all the time. So it is only when he has taken drugs or is totally motivated for a small period of time, he is prepared to lay down his life. The legal system is very important, and as General Kocher very rightly said, it must be quick and efficient. You do that, the deterrence is there in place. If we don't do it, I'm afraid we've lost that deterrence. Anand.
Yeah, I know we are not a state like that. We are not a hard state. We are a humane state. But sometimes one wonders whether these terrorists, when they're caught with those explosives and bombs, and as those bombs are diffused, should they also be dealt with just like the same way? But that's not who we are as a country. So that's why that hard end of the law, that inhumane way of putting an end to a life, is something that is not subscribed to or that's not followed. But an example has to be made. There has to be a serious deterrent that has to be put in place, Binay Singh. Something has to come. But perhaps more importantly, we have to emerge out of this denial. I remember the Raksha Mantri of this country coming out and saying there are no ISIS threat. The Chief Minister of a state of Kerala coming out and saying, oh, hardly anybody went. But the numbers were camouflaged. The threat, the challenge was perhaps overlooked, or they wanted to deny it because they didn't want to make it a national headline. But they didn't do anything on ground about it to counter it. How did an Imran Hashim enter Coimbatore, a Sri Lankan? What was he doing on Indian soil, sitting and staying in this place? And of course, he was not just staying, he was also sermonizing, because these people are all highly influenced like him. So you can ban a Zakir Naik and send him out of the country, but you never were wise to Imran Hashim when he was here, Binay Singh. Final word.
Anand, hate preaching in a particular community, radicalizing them and using them as a fault line against India. This idea is just not after independence. It has a pre-independence history. Let me give a very little brief. In 1886, All India Mohammedan Educational Conference, Muslim League 1906, Militant Volunteer Corps 1918, Tablighi Jamaat 1926, National Muslim Guards 1931, Jamaat-e Islami 1948, All India Muslim League 1948, SIMI 1977, Islamic Seva Sangh 1992, People Democratic Party 1993, NDF 1994, Kerala Forum of Dignity 2001, Madina Nizi Parsai 2001, Tamil Nadu Tawheed Jamaat 2004, and PFI 2006. So let us wait for a new version to come. But one thing I agree, that our agency, they need to get off that old school hangover, because these organizations, these threats are next generation. This is a next generation modus operandi. So the old school practice, all the old school hangover, it is not going to work. And we definitely need to sensitize the masses, not just civil society, but whole of the society, We need to sensitize the 140 crores of people in this country. We need to decentralize this topic, the topic of national security, internal security. We need to take out this topic from the intellectual elite. Internal security has become a topic of intellectual elite. It must be a topic, a matter of discussion of common masses. This is going to work as an antidote for this, new kind of threat. And the general masses, the Indian agencies, the Indian police, the government, and the normal people also, we need to see that there are footprints of conspiracy theories not on the borders, but outside our houses, in
Correct.
the villages, in the
They
kasbahs,
moved
in the
hinterland.
small
They moved
towns.
into the heart of our country. Now, if
Yes.
these radical outfits are present deep into Madhya Pradesh, that means they are there everywhere across the country. So
They are
today,
everywhere.
today it is now highlighted in south of the India. Even today in Assam, in Nagaon, another person has been arrested for his connection with the Ansarullah Bangla. So they are there everywhere. We have to be vigilant as a nation, and we have to, like you said, decentralize this matter of internal security, because internal to all of us, so it matters to all of us. All of us need to collectively keep vigil. It's not just up to the agencies or the government. Points well made by our panelists this evening. I thank you all as I wind up debate number 1 on the right stand tonight. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Iranian movement that has now gone global, with the Iranian football team refusing to sing the national anthem on a world platform at the FIFA World Cup ahead of their match against England. They may have lost the match, but they have won millions of hearts globally for endorsing their support to the anti-hijab movement that's taken great shape and perhaps put Iran on the boil after the death of Mahsa Amini. Stay with us.